Dan Gilmore, Chief Marketing Officer with Softeon, joins me for a conversation about so-called smart warehouses. Hi, Dan.
Hey, glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Sorry about that so-called. But I do want to ask you about the coming of smart warehouses. I mean, I get the sense that to a certain degree, aren't smart warehouses already there?
You know, maybe we're getting there, but I'd argue we have warehouses, distribution centers that are efficient, but I'm just not sure how smart they are. We have smart everything, right? We have smart homes, we have smart toothbrushes, we have everything in between. But a lot of those things have to do with internet connectivity and analytics and off of that data and things like that. There's some really exciting things happening in the area of warehouse management, especially warehouse execution systems. And I think maybe the best parallel is what's all been happening for years in the manufacturing sector with the notion of the smart factory, the smart manufacturing plant. And that's exemplified by things like Industry 2.0 or Manufacturing 2.0. I think you're going to see the same kind of movement happen in warehousing just a few years behind what we've already seen in manufacturing.
Okay, now we're throwing around a lot of terms here, the point O's and the smart and the use of the word smart. What makes a smart warehouse smart?
Yeah, we've got a whole framework for it that we're not going to be able to cover it probably in the time today, but I got a few things I wanted to pick out that I think would be relevant.
Okay.
So one of the things that first really galvanized me or whatever, especially with regard to warehouse execution systems, is this notion that they're always on. That's different than a way of warehouse management typically operates. Warehouse management systems are very efficient, but are sort of linear, right? I receive it, I put it away, I replenish, I pick, I pack, I stage, I ship. We still need to do those things and need to do them well. But they're kind of reactive in nature, whereas where we're moving to a system that is more proactive in nature, it's monitoring the environment, seeing what's going on in terms of throughput, capacities, constraints, all of these kind of things, and making smart decisions about how work should flow based on that information. This is very different than the way a traditional WMS is thought.
There you go. So it's actually making recommendations as opposed to simply recording data, and it's recording it and it's soon enough or on enough of a real-time basis that it can be of use in the moment. Right?
Yeah, absolutely, and that's really my second kind of attribute of the smart warehouse is the automated release of work. So one of the things that our research at Softion found out was how often, even with tier one advanced WMSs, still a lot of decision making at the supervisory level and manager level is still very human based. And when you do that, it adds a couple things. First off, it adds latency into the process. Somebody has to be looking at screens of data and making decisions. Second, except for very simple decisions, the human being, I hate to say it, but for all of us, can't do it as smart as the computer can. Right, so we see a big opportunity to turn over more of the decision making to the smarts of the warehouse execution system, warehouse management system in this new era, and do so very proactively. And so it's going to automatically release work based on things like order priority, like human and inventory, human and labor availability, optimization opportunities, carrier cutoff times. All of these things are just going to flow work out to the floor without the need for the human in between, and it's going to make for a smoother flow of goods and just better decision making all around.
Is it making recommendations which then must be acted upon by a human, or is it making recommendations that are immediately put into practice?
Well, a little of both. I mean, certainly in the end it's going to result in people picking orders, and unless you got a full robotic system, even then the same would apply just to a robot. Or packing orders, all of that stuff. But in terms of automatically adjusting the plan, that can happen without any human intervention whatsoever.
Interesting. The moment I hear the word smart in the context of a discussion like this, immediately I think artificial intelligence, I think machine learning.
Yeah.
Where do they come into the picture?
Yeah, that's part of it. We're still, frankly, for all the hype, we're still in the early stages of that journey of AI and machine learning, but it's certainly going to be part of the future. First, I just want to say that there's tremendous amounts of optimization that can be done using technologies like advanced algorithmic development and what's called a dynamic rules engine, a contextually sensitive rules engine that considers capacities and constraints. So you can get way down the path of the smart warehouse without anything to do with AI and machine learning. Ultimately, will it be part of the picture? Absolutely. I'll give you one example of some of the automated planning that I'm talking about. You might originally today rely on kind of static estimates of how long it's going to take something to get picked and transported to the packing area and use that as a basis to manage the metering of that work onto the floor. But where we're headed is going to be how are we doing actually today? Normally we get 500 cases a day, but today we're getting 425. Now first off, you might want to explore why is that, but in addition to that, the system is going to adjust to say, okay, wait a minute, I got to give a little bit more time for this because we're actually running behind today for whatever reason, and factor that into its release of work onto the floor.
And the phrase machine learning indicates that the machine is literally learning and getting better at the decisions and recommendations that it's making.
Absolutely, and we're going to be making a number of estimates of how long something is going to take, but we're going to learn from those to continue to refine those estimates and make them better every time.
So if some of this is just future state, How much future? How long?
Virtually everything we've talked about today, with the exception of, still early in the curve of AI and ML, everything I've talked about today not only is commercially available today, but has been proven itself on the warehouse floor. So it's still in relatively small numbers to date, but this isn't some far off vision of what's happening. This is really real technology that's happening right now and delivering value.
Is the end game a humanless dark warehouse?
Well, what I'm talking about doesn't depend on robotics, okay, which your question sort of implied.
Right.
And that's a whole other topic about how much, we're going to go down the robotic path. It probably is going to, though, result in less decision making, as I've indicated already, by supervisors and managers, and more in starting with recommendations that this is what you should do, and eventually, once that has proven itself to be of value, automatically doing that work.
Dan, thanks so much for helping me to understand just what a smart warehouse is. I really appreciate that. Could I now just ask you a question about Softeon itself? Where do you guys fit into this picture?
Yeah, thanks. So I'll appreciate the opportunity. So we're a warehouse software, supply chain software company specialized in warehouse management, warehouse execution systems, and what's called distributed order management. These technologies are kind of all coming together in terms of smart warehousing, smart distribution, really being able to orchestrate order fulfillment in a way that meets consumer needs and does so at least possible cost.
Thanks so much, Dan, for helping us to understand what a smart warehouse is and a little bit about what Softeon's up to as well. I really appreciate it.
Thanks again.
I've been speaking with Dan Gilmore of Softeon. Thank you very much for watching.